This video is to clearly explain why this prototypes file is inside week 5. So if you download it and open it up, you're going to see a folder with a bunch of files that have prototypes. Now, what a prototype is when we take an object from a JavaScript and we built new functionality based off that object. So in the scheme of your learning of such an important language as JavaScript, and I don't know where you are in the program or what your plans are, but usually once we get through ES6 and we learn objects, next thing is how we prototype an object. So it's important because we can make functionality that doesn't exist. Now, there's another whole prong to your learning, and that is, using JavaScript frameworks. Things like React, Angular, Vue, which is offered in WebD 171. But if you haven't taken that or aren't planning on taking it, I would have this into your vocabulary. And these also make pretty good portfolio pieces in CodePen because you're creating reusable components. Let me demonstrate. I open this up inside Sublime, and I'll keep my browser open as well so we can see the functionality. Keep in mind, I'm not using the arrow syntax here, but I have a function that takes 3 arguments. This function is going to be an object. So I have this .name, the keyword, equaling the name that gets passed. I have this .job title equaling the job title that gets passed, and this .born equals born. So this is my current object, okay? And in this case, I have Fred equals new employee, which is a new object, new employee object, and I'm passing my 3 things: name, job title, and when I was born, or when Fred Flintstone was born. Now, this is an example of a prototype. I have a property that is not part of the object, but we're adding a value to that equals $20,000, 20,000. Now, if you think about this, we could console.log anything about Fred, who's a new instance of that value. I can do Fred dot name, and then I would get Fred Flintstone because Fred Flintstone was passed in the argument. Let's go back to prototype real quick, and I'll make sure that I'll refresh this. And again, I console.log that so it won't appear, but you can see document right on 20,000 there. And here you can see console.log, and it's Fred Flintstone. So the fact is that we have an object. We've added properties to that object by passing arguments. And then we've also added a prototype of that. Now salary is for this one instance of Fred. And that's why when we document right, we saw that Fred was $20,000. So keep your eye on the prize here. We want to prototype objects. Now that can be an object you use, you inherit. I have so many examples of it, but I use this a lot with my store locators that you may see around town. Walgreens, Valiant, Bausch & Lomb. I've done a lot of store locators. And they always have an object, and I will prototype that object to replace my locations. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to this, and we'll go through some examples of prototype. And again, there won't be a quiz on this, but it's up to you if you want to throw some stuff in there. Like, for example, math prototype. This is an example of a prototype that simply takes anything and divides it by 2. No big deal. So what we're going to do is create the function, make a variable that equals the new number, because number is the object in JavaScript we're going to borrow, and then I'm going to call the function of D, which is new number. Now up here we're prototyping the object number from JavaScript. So number prototype, we have the prototype keyword, and myMet, which is a function of its own, and it equals whatever the property is divided by 2. So let's see how it's used. I'm passing 55, which is this, divided by 2, which is this my prop. And we can call it like this. We can call it my function d myMet get element by id demo, and inner HTML of that, which is x, equals d, the number, my prop. So think about it. D equals an instance of this, and my prop is the function, which would equal this, the value of divided by 2. So what we've done here is prototype the number object in order to divide something divided by 2. I know it sounds silly, but when we do, and it's really, we're not using the math object at all, but we do this and we get half of 55, which is 27.5. Let's do something with the array. The array is pretty interesting because take something like this. Most languages, they probably have a string handling function that changes everything to uppercase. Now, arrays are a little bit different because arrays don't have anything like that, because arrays, even if they're string arrays, would need to use string function on each element of the array. So what we've done here is have fruits equaling an array, and you can see they're not all capitalized, and then I pass fruits.myUcase. So we're going to pass fruits, the array, into this prototype of the array object. And when I call myUcase function, it equals this function. So for each element, each letter of the value that gets sent in, we're going to take this I equals this I to uppercase and document.write this I. So it's basically going to run on each single string. So let's go ahead and check this out in array prototype. So I'm going to go back, and this is a really good thing because it gets to the gist of what we're trying to achieve. Banana, orange, apple, mango. Okay, so for each one of these things. And we can console.log this I to get an idea of what's happening with I, because we're looping around the length of whatever we pass. And in this case, the length is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, banana, 0, 1, 2, 3. For each one of these, we're going to roll through each one of those elements inside. Basically, we're passing each element of the array to that. So let's go ahead and log this I. And then we'll check it out in our console. So hit refresh, and now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So what we're doing with each one of these is taking this I to uppercase, string to upper. And we have now created new functionality, myUcase, in a prototype of the array object. So these are reusable components that, quite frankly, with JavaScript, there's a lot of things that aren't programmed already. I'll show you another good one here, and that's the date prototype. When we get the date function, usually the getMonth method will pass us a number, 0 through 11, for each month of the year. And in this case, we're prototyping the date, and we have another myMet function that equals this to be consistent. And in this case, we're doing new date, myMet, and then we're getting them by ID demo and making it myProp. It's the same as the other elements, but in this case, we're saying if this getMonth is equal to 0, this property will be equal to January. That way, we can change the number into the actual actual month of the year. And we could also do this to populate a dropdown, which is a very handy thing to do. So if I were going to pick one of these, I think the date is probably the most beneficial for usability. So right now it's number, but you could easily loop through 0 through 11 and actually write a prototype that has all the months for a dropdown. So instead of writing a condition in each one, something like get all months. Okay, so and you could have it start with the current month, but the fact is right now, if I do get month, it's 10, and that's why this my prop is November, and that's why the inner HTML of X equals November. Super. Let's look at a few more. Something like a bool, and this is another instance where this is sort of less, it's more teaching and a little bit more, a little less of prototype or portfolio valuability. This one's kind of a silly function, but I'm saying, okay, my color function, this value, if it happens to be equal to true, and you can always go breeze in here and make it a triple equal, then this color equals green, otherwise this is red. So let's do A equals new Boolean 1. 1 obviously is true. A, my color, should then be green. And then we go to the demo and we see that it is green. So if we passed it as 0, just to give you an idea, this would trigger false. Something like a stoplight, green or true, red is false. So that's the bool prototype. Now let's take a look at the rest here, and this is the custom prototype that we already looked at. And what I'd like to do next is look at the clear prototype. And this kind of takes you on a lesson of an object. So how we can utilize prototypes and pull them out and actually clear the value. So in this case, I'm going to go to that section, which is clear prototype, and we'll go ahead and log it. Down here at the bottom, you see set timeout is not a function on line 60. That's because I'm showing you how to trigger an error. But let's just save that, and we'll go back to the browser, and here we go. So let's take a look at each line. Okay, so I've got a person object. It's very similar to the employee we showed in the first prototype example. And if we pass it a name, we can actually get that property to be that name. So if we prototype that and get name, we can return this name. So now we have a getter of the prototype. So let's create a new object. John equals new person, and we'll pass John to it. When I console.log john.getName, I get, of course, John. That's the same as our prototype at the beginning. Now, let's modify the person and get updates. So I can say prototype say my name. And now we say person.prototype, and since person is an instance of that, watch what happens. Hello, my name is John. Now that is interesting because we know that John equals new person John. But even though we set that, you might think John is the only object that has the value. But no, now the person, which is a prototype, has that functionality. Hello, my name is this getName. And why is that? It's because getName is prototyped off the object. So person.prototype, say my name, is off this getName. Now we can call the new method on John. So if you take a look at the other one, we've got John say my name, which is the console.log. So down below we have a function for a customer, which is the same thing. And what we can do is prototype those exact functionalities of say my name because we prototype the customer. And this is equal to new person, and now we could do new customer Dream Inc. But because we prototyped all the elements of the person object, customer say my name will say, hello, my name is Dream Inc. And that's why we get that. Now we can have more setters. We can prototype set customer, get amount due, things like that. And these are all prototyped off the customer. And watch, if we do customer set amount due, we set it to 2000. Customer get amount due is this right here. And remember, customer was originally off the prototype. So when we set the amount and get the amount, guess what happens? 2000. Now, if we go to John, no longer is this going to have a value, and this is what tricked off the error at the beginning. John set amount due will not have a value because John at that point is only based off getName, which is part of the person object. So that's why when we do this, it generates an error. So let me save this first so we get that error. But there won't be a method. See, untyped, it's not a function. So that's everything in a bunch. Anyway, that is prototyping. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you can get possibly something like the date to be in your code pens or your gists. And I think it might be a good topping point or the next level of learning in just vanilla JavaScript. A little more object-oriented philosophies, things that will ready you for React and Angular.